the end, when the warehouse was operational, it started to become evident that they were losing kit. After 2 years of live operation, they realized that they had already bought the equivalent of their original order 2 years previously, but couldn't account for the circa 90 that had disappeared.
And how were they processing that? They just said, oh, it's gone, and they just sweep it.
Guys would turn up for shift and say, oh, we're short of handhelds, and they would parachute handhelds in, probably from their warehouse up at Kettering that was run by DSV. And then someone would say to the ops manager, you know, can we order some more handhelds? And he would just order another 20.
Wow.
Senior management cottoned on to this and said this needs to stop. And that's when they started exploring, what do we do? Now, at first they started doing sign in, sign out. They had cages that you had to, you know, put it back into. But despite that, these things still seemed to disappear. Yes, there were damages. Yes, there was, you know, end of life and they needed replacing, but that's just business as usual. There was also huge problems with them being left and they'd go dead, and then users had to recharge them and get logged back in, and then they'd find that actually it was still stuck on the previous user, and that became an overhead on local IT. There were issues around firmware updates because these things they looked like they'd been docked correctly, but actually there was slightly, you know, skew in the docking cradle, and they didn't get charged, they didn't get firmware updates. And that was the first time that I saw the idea of using these intelligent cabinets. And I think the key call out for me was when I read the technical description and you know, the specification of these cabinets, I thought, it's a long time since I've seen one solution that actually answers about 4 fundamental problems. And when you know, a really high level business case for the introduction of these things, and it just washed its face straight away. It just seemed, perhaps the best technical ideas are always the simplest ones. And it just seemed, you know, they'd been walking around for 2 years saying, we don't know where they're going. They don't get upgraded properly. They're not always charged. That all of a sudden, one cabinet just took all of that pain away. Not least of which, you know, the hidden benefits of, and they're accountable, because, you know, you don't just get a pretty little LED showing up. You've actually got a page you can go and look at. And say, yeah, I can see that, you know, that rack is full and they're all charging, and it can tell me what the serial number is and all of its information. I can do, you know, battery condition, you know, analysis, and it was just an absolute godsend. There are all sorts of ripple effects that came out of something as simple as controlling shrinkage, maintaining updates, maintaining productivity around they're always charged, and the added benefit of actually being able to see what's being used, when it was used, where it was used, and who it was used by.
I think a lot of the time when people look at them, they kind of go, oh, either is it too good to be true? How can something that's simple, you know, they almost want to over-engineer a solution to their problem. How, I guess, if you were speaking to somebody that was taking that approach, looking back now with hindsight, how would you explain to them? How would you help them get through that?
I would absolutely accept that, you know, there is the phrase, if something is too good to be true. I guess at its simplest level, the cabinets are probably as close to, if it's too good to be true, can it really be that true? Actually, I think it can be with these cabinets, and it you know, it doesn't take an accountant to work out how much people are spending on these things if they've got a shrinkage issue, how much lost productivity if people can't use it for firmware update, not charged, throwing an error that no one's picking up on until it's too late, then causing the downtime or inventory integrity issues because, you know, it thinks it's connecting to Wi-Fi and it's not, so on and so forth. I think anybody who is on the fence just needs to go and do a very simple cost-benefit comparison of what do these things cost to install and maintain versus what have we spent over the last 2 or 3 years on achieving the same end that the cabinet can do. And you know, me trying to convince somebody else, you know, you can't always convert a cynic. Let them go and do the maths for themselves, because this is simple maths, in my opinion. And you know, not least of which, you can lock the cabinet. I've been in many warehouses in my career, and the amount of times you see docking cradles on a shelf with a plug coming out going into a 4-way gang that then is strung along a couple of nails in the block wall that goes to a 3-pin socket, and you know, that's what we do in warehouses. Is it right? No. Nice cabinet, lockable door, or you know, RF access or swipe access, or however you want to get in and out of it, where everything is safe and secure, away from dust. I suppose, in answer to your question, I'm not sure why anyone would question not having one unless they are so strapped for cash that they don't want the initial capital outlay.